the two debaters, Richard Wolff and Gene Epstein, going into their final statements. They each have 7.5 minutes. And again, remember that the proposition, the resolution before us is socialism is preferable to capitalism as an economic system that promotes freedom, equality, and prosperity. Richard Wolff, you have 7.5 minutes to seal the deal.
The first sign that socialism is on its way is that we're having this debate. That we have Bernie Sanders running and he has the name socialist and he doesn't give it up. He doesn't turn away. Elizabeth Warren, who has very similar programs, she still feels the need to reassure everybody she likes capitalism. Bernie doesn't. The reality is, up until 6 years ago, my presence on the American media scene was so tiny, none of you would ever have heard of me. I've done more public speaking at the invitation of American audiences in the last 4 years than I did in the previous 50. Yeah, the public awareness is to the right because of the last years of neoliberalism and the orange clown. I understand that. But beneath that is a shift to the left in the United States. Nothing illustrates it in my mind any better than the remarkable number of times Gene Epstein told you how he agreed with me. I don't run away from the label socialist, and I don't run away from the label Marxist either. I'm proud of what I've learned from those traditions. But I'm also very clear, and I really hope I've gotten that across, that the way the question for this evening was posed is a problem. There is no singular socialism. There never was. Socialism is a large, complex tradition of multiple different notions that are often at great odds with one another and have had long and bitter disputes. What in the world do you mean by socialism? Is it the social democracy of Scandinavia and German and Western European countries? Is it the socialism that China or Russia or Cuba talk about? Is it the focus on transforming workplaces into worker co-ops instead of undemocratic, hierarchical workplace kingdoms? What do you mean when you talk about socialism? The very idea of using the singular reflects what I tried to say at the beginning. We have to understand we are emerging from a 75-year period in which we didn't learn about it, think about it, or discuss it. Or if we did, it was in dismissive, cursory manner that didn't teach people anything. It's always been an awkward moment when American tourists go to Europe and discover that in every single European country, socialist parties are big, important political institutions. I won't embarrass you by asking you how many of you know that the government in Portugal today is a coalition of the Portuguese Socialist Party, the Portuguese Communist Party, and the Portuguese Green Party, and that they've been the government for quite a few years now. I won't embarrass you. The last thing I would say is, because of this peculiar fetish Americans have about the government as either being something that's going to save us all, which is crazy, or which is going to crush us all, which is equally crazy. Governments do what they do in large part because of the pressure from those who have the position to shape them. One of the problems with the liberal, in the old British sense, or the libertarian, if you like, is that the argument always starts with the government as if it were a deus ex machina that just has some qualities of things it does without asking the obvious question, why does the government do this or that or the next thing? We're supposed to believe it's built into the genes of the government that it does certain things. The government does what the pressure of the society and the way it's organized make it do. Every bit as much as what the government does influences the rest of the society. Let me conclude by correcting Gene about Jeremy Corbyn, because he's the future in terms of what we're talking about. The British Labour Party, the second party in England, by the way, a party most of whose members identify as socialists, in the British Labour Party, there's a commitment they've made. And the commitment goes like this. When we're elected, one of the first laws we'll pass is the following. Any company organized in Great Britain can continue the way it is, as a capitalist enterprise. But if it comes to the following decision, either to shut down, or to move out of Great Britain, or to sell itself to another company, or to go public with an IPO, issuing shares, before it can do that, it must give its own workers the right of first refusal. That's the law. That the workers can buy the company and convert it into a democratically run worker cooperative. And when everyone says, well, where in the world will the workers get the money to do that? Mr. McDonnell, the closest advisor Mr. Corbyn has, smiles and says, the government will lend it to them. Why? Because for the British people to have freedom of choice between a capitalist, undemocratic enterprise on the one hand and a worker co-op democratic enterprise on the other, they have to have some experience of what they're like, both to buy from and to work in. And the only way they can have that experience so they can choose freely between them or what mix they want of them is if there's a sector that they can buy from and work at. So we, as the leaders of Britain, have to create the sector so that the free choice of our people between systems can finally happen. That's the role of the government, expanding free choice, rather than being represented as imposing something in that fearful imagery that we all have, as if the government is like those nasty people at the post office who make us wait before they sell us the stamps. Thank you.